welcome on this beautiful Sunday morning. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Whether you are a longtime member or visiting here for the very first time, your presence enriches our community. A warm welcome to everyone here in this physical sanctuary and to those joining us in the virtual sanctuary. This is a loving community of seekers where all people of goodwill are welcome. Here we strive to live with integrity, nurture wonder, and inspire the actions that will transform us and transform the world. I'm Carolyn Bierke, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm delighted to be serving this Unitarian Society as ministerial intern. And for this morning's service, I'm honored to be here with lead minister Reverend Julia Hamilton, music director Matthew Grissett, pianist Heather Levin, Director of Lifespan Education, Charla Brigante, and Membership Coordinator, Angie Swanson-Kiriakou. I would like to extend a special welcome to any visitors or guests joining us for the first time. We would like to stay in touch and welcome you into this community. There are connection cards at the welcome table in the courtyard during coffee hour, or you can put your name into the chat online. On the second Sunday of the month, we have a casual orientation across the courtyard in the front office. And if you feel like this might be your spiritual home, if you've been attending for a while and have decided that the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara is where you want to be, we would like to welcome you into membership in this congregation. You can sign the membership book at the welcome table, and we will connect you to the ongoing life of this church. And we have a lot going on beyond our Sunday service. I just want to highlight that if you are looking for a time of quiet and centering in the middle of the week, our next Taizé service, which means a service of song, reflection, and readings, will take place on Tuesday, March 11th at 6 p.m. here in the sanctuary, and it will be led by myself and Reverend Julia.
I have another invitation to offer you. This afternoon, after services starting at 11:30, we're going to be convening a community conversation around anti-racism work and where we go next as a congregation. The Anti-Racism Commission of the board has been working with the board for many years to figure out how we live into our commitment to anti-oppression and anti-racism work here at the Unitarian Society. And you might have noticed that the landscape has been changing rather rapidly over the past month or so. And so they decided they wanted to hear from you as a congregation, what your questions, what your fears, what your hopes might be for this work that we carry into the future, which means we need to hear from you. So there are 3 opportunities to participate in these community conversations. The first is at 11:30 in Parish Hall. Rumor is there'll be snacks, so if that entices you, please join us. There's also an opportunity online on Zoom for those of you who are joining us online. It'll be Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock. And there's another in-person opportunity on Friday at 10 a.m. here in Parish Hall in person. That's when our Justice and Equity team typically meets online for their Zoom conversation. We're going to be doing it in person on Friday at 10. So we hope that you can find one of these opportunities to share your thoughts and experiences as we discern our way forward as a community. There's a lot going on in our lives and in this community, so I invite you to take a breath, to settle yourself wherever you are, to allow yourself to be fully present to this moment, to our time together as we ring our bell and let the sound connect us. Before we do our chalice lighting this morning, I want to invite us into an opportunity for joy that I neglected to put into the invitations just a moment ago, and that is I want to invite Sarah and Tammy forward, because sometimes we need a little joyful community to balance out all of the other work we're doing in the world. So come on up, Sarah and Tammy.
What a lovely dress you have on, Sarah.
Well, thank you. I got this at the Fashion Fling last year. That's our annual youth clothing fundraiser.
Oh, well, that reminds me. This year's Fashion Fling is coming up, right?
That's right. It will be on March 14th, 15th, and 16th. I believe the dates are in your order of service.
And in your email.
We're going to need some help this year, which is why we're up here. First, we need donations of gently used clothing. This is a great time to go through your closet and get rid of anything that no longer sparks joy.
And this year we are accepting clothing from all genders and ages, but it needs to be consignment shop quality.
We're also going to need help from volunteers before, during, and after the event.
And it's a lot of fun, and you end up getting first crack at amazing outfits like this.
Finally, we need your help getting the word out. Please tell your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, even your enemies.
Yes. Donations begin the week of the event. Did we mention that everything will be at bargain prices, which is great for teachers like us?
We'll be out in the courtyard today during coffee hour to answer questions and help sign volunteers up for this super fun event. See you there.
And now I invite us into our time of chalice lighting. If you are joining us in our online sanctuary and you have a chalice at home or a candle to light, you can type your name into the chat and type "chalice is lit" wherever you are. And we have Kyle and Dylan here to light our chalice in our sanctuary for us. We light this chalice in honor of those who risk everything to shelter the vulnerable and for those who stand against injustice. This flame burns as a quiet beacon of refuge in dark times, a signal that hope is alive. May it remind us that resilience is not only in great acts, but in the steady courage of kindness, the fierce protection of the oppressed, and the unyielding light of justice. May we be bearers of this flame, bringing light where there is shadow and love where there is fear. Thank you, Kyle and Dylan. Every week at the Unitarian Society, we take a moment after we light our chalice to think of something that was a good thing in the world or in our lives. These can be large, they can be personal, and we invite you to think of something concrete and real that you witnessed this week that brought you hope or joy or courage, and not keep it to yourself, but share it with each other in the time of conversation after the service or throughout your week. And for the good thing I want to bring to this community this morning, it's something very simple. It's daffodils. Daffodils are my good thing this week because when I was living in New York City, daffodils were the first thing to poke up through the snow and the sign of things to come. And no matter how gritty or slushy the streets and sidewalks were, every spring, little green shoots would peek their heads up, and soon you would have these bright, brilliant yellow flowers along the walk in an otherwise gray world. In Santa Barbara, we don't get the flowers poking up through the ground, but you can get them at Trader Joe's. And they are little bundles closed up tight when you get them, but they never fail to bloom. And so daffodils are my good thing this morning. Let us all sing together our opening song of Woyaya, Please Rise in Body and Spirit.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 woyaya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 woyaya.
Good morning. It is that time in our service for a story, so if you like to sit on the stairs, come on up. I'm gonna take this chair. Good morning. Good to have you all. This morning's story was written by Carolyn back there, so I get the honor of reading it. So, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're walking on a trail, maybe one you've been on before. It's a little steep in places, but you know you can handle it. You've made it up big hills before, and you run down the other side. But then something changes. Maybe after a big rain, the trail is suddenly muddy and slippery. You take a step and your foot slides out from under you. You grab onto something to steady yourself, but it's not as easy as it was before. Every step takes more effort. And sometimes it's even worse. Maybe the water rushed so fast that part of the trail washed away. Maybe the little bridge across the stream is gone. You were sure you knew the way forward, but now it feels impossible. How does that feel to you? Well, that feeling of the ground shifting, of losing your balance, that's how a lot of people feel when something they've worked hard for suddenly disappears. A long time ago, there were women who wanted to vote. They paid taxes, like everyone else. They worked hard, raised families, and helped their communities. But when it came time to vote for the people who made the laws, they were told no. That's hard to believe, huh? Still, they didn't give up. They gathered in homes and churches. They wrote letters. They marched in the streets. And then, after the Civil War, a new law was passed to give more people the right to vote. The women thought, finally, we'll be included. But when the law was written, they were left out. It felt like they had walked for miles toward a bridge, only to find it had been washed away. Some were tired, some were angry, some wanted to turn back. But then something happened. Instead of giving up, they built another way forward. Some, like a woman named Alice Paul, stood outside the White House holding signs and demanding that the president listen. Even when they were arrested, they didn't stop. Some, like Ida B. Wells, knew that black women were being ignored. She pushed forward anyway, refusing to stay silent, demanding that all women be included. Some, like Susan B. Anthony, spent her whole life fighting for the right to vote and never got to see it happen. But she helped lay the path for others to follow. It took more than 50 years after the Civil War, but finally, in 1920, women won the right to vote. And still, the work continued. Sometimes the ground beneath us shifts, and we feel lost. But even when it seems like we're sliding backward, that doesn't mean the journey is over. It just means we have to find another way across. Maybe we build a new bridge. Maybe we forge a different path. Maybe we help each other, step by step, until we find steady ground again. I say we do all those things, Carolyn. So if you ever feel like the world isn't as steady as it used to be, maybe some of you are feeling that right now, remember, you are not alone. Others have felt this way before, and they found a way forward. And we will, too. That's our time for all ages. Matthew, let's sing our children out.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
And now I invite our board president, Lorraine Woodman, up for a message.
Good morning. As Carolyn said, this year I have the honor of being the president of the Board of Trustees. And I wanted to invite you on behalf of the, can you hear me now? Well, let me try again. Is that better? Okay, thank you. Unitarians always speak up. So anyway, I wanted to take this opportunity to invite you all to the Board of Trustees meeting. Everybody's always welcome. Now, you may think that is not the most exciting invitation I've ever received, but you might, it actually might be. It's They are interesting meetings. We talk about topics that are important to the congregation. You'll find that you have a very thoughtful board who engages in very meaningful discussions. They are held the fourth Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock. They're on Zoom. They're also in person in Parish Hall, and everybody's welcome. So, also Angie, she posts the agenda on the Friday before, so if there's something that catches your eye, feel free to join us. So, the other reason that I'm here this morning is to speak on behalf of the Board of Trustees. You've been hearing a series of reflections from other members of the board talking about various aspects of the Bridge to the Future capital campaign. People have talked about things like upgrades to Jefferson Hall, improvements to Blake Building, campus accessibility, and why the capital campaign is needed now. Today I'm talking about the sustainability and resiliency elements of the campaign, which I think are needed now more than ever in light of our rapidly changing climate and our rapidly changing political situation. I'm sure that most of you are well aware of what's going on with the climate, and it's not good. Here are just a few not-so-fun facts. Last month, the world experienced its hottest January on record. 2024 was the hottest year on record. Before that, 2023 was the hottest year on record. In fact, the 10 hottest years on record have occurred in the last decade. Nearly 600 people in the U.S. died last year as a result of climate-related events. And the costs of climate-related disasters in the U.S. have skyrocketed. Between 1980 and 2023, an average of 9 events exceeding $1 billion occurred each year. The annual average for the most recent 5 years is 23 events. The total cost of disasters that exceeded $1 billion since 1980 is now about $3 trillion. $3 trillion we're spending on that. Moving on, I do not have strong enough words to convey my horror what the current administration is doing to our country, at least not that I can use in this sacred space. I won't use his name, but you know who I'm talking about. Among the abominations related to climate change, he ordered the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which includes FEMA, who is responsible for dealing with climate disasters, to immediately stop work connected to climate change and to get rid of climate-related terms. I am not making this up. He fired or put on administrative leave countless federal experts who deal with climate change and environmental justice. He told U.S. government scientists to stop working on the next report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the world's leading scientific authority on this issue. The reports that they prepare document in detail the global effects of climate change and steps people can take to address them. He has drawn from the Paris Climate Agreement again. He wants to increase fossil fuel drilling, and he wants to eliminate all incentives to go green. I'm sure there's more, but you get the picture. As an aside, I have to say it is beyond ironic that in the ostensible effort to reduce waste in our government, the person who shall not be named is taking steps that will exacerbate the already high cost of climate-related disasters. So what can we do against this backdrop? I know we are not going to solve climate change just on our own, but I think our UU values and principles require us to do everything that we can. Our eight principles include respect for the interdependent web of all existence. The UUA statement of shared values includes protecting the earth from exploitation. And our own mission statement includes caring for the earth and its rich web of life to protect it for current and future generations. And this is something that we want to do. In the visioning process leading up to the capital campaign, many people talked about wanting our buildings to reflect our values. Others talked more specifically about wanting to make improvements to ensure that we reduce our carbon footprint. Things like installing more solar panels and putting in battery storage, heat pumps, and mini splits. Carbon-free USSB is a slogan suggested by one person. Another said, I dream of a USSB that does as much as possible to reduce its impact on the Earth's resources. I love that one. Another wants the Unitarian Society to be an ecological sustainability center that would be a model for our community. Yet others want us to be able to serve as a potential refuge in time of natural disaster, a community sanctuary as we will face the uncertainties ahead. Our building team is working hard to make these dreams a reality. With the addition of more solar panels plus heat pumps and mini splits, we can minimize or eliminate our use of fossil fuels and make our buildings more comfortable for everyone who uses them and save us money in the long run. With the addition of battery storage, we could serve as a resilience hub, ready to help our congregation and community in times of disaster. At one point in the recent LA fires, close to 200,000 people were under evacuation orders. We too live in a fire-prone, flood-prone area that is also getting a heck of a lot warmer than it used to be. It would not be surprising for a climate-driven event to happen here, requiring our neighbors to seek shelter. What I heard in the visioning process is that this congregation cares deeply about environmental sustainability and about being of service to our community in times of crisis. This is where our values lead us. This is who we are. Our capital campaign is how we can make this happen. So save the date for Sunday, March 16th, when we will be sharing an update from the building team about the work they've been doing, including a first look at some renderings from our architect. I've seen them, and I'm really excited. The whole board is really excited about these, and I think that you will be too. Thank you.
And thank you, Lorraine. As we sing, we are a gentle, angry people. We are reminded that progress is not just about one voice, but about collective action. Our voices raised in song are also raised for justice. Composer Holly Near wrote this song as a call to action. In talking about the song, and specifically verse 4, she says, I wrote this song when Harvey Milk and George Moscone were assassinated. We originally sang We Are Gay and Lesbian Together, but then we were surrounded by the support of allies, and so I changed it to We Are Gay and Straight Together. And now we are learning more and more about gender and sexuality, and now it requires many more syllables that I can fit into a song. And so now let us sing, We Are All in This Together. Please rise in body or spirit.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are all in this together, and we are singing for are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
There is a pattern to progress. We see it over and over again in history. A bold step more forward is met with resistance. Change is demanded, and then forces rise to hold it back. It feels like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or sometimes like being pushed back down as we rise to our feet. In the following case studies, history also shows us something else. When people refuse to back down, when they meet injustice with courage, when they make what John Lewis calls good trouble, that's when the arc of justice bends. John Lewis understood this pattern because he lived it. As a young black man in the segregated South, he saw injustice around him. He saw the whites-only signs, the schools that were separate and unequal, the everyday indignities that were meant to keep black people in their place. And he saw people trying to change it, peacefully, powerfully, with a vision of a different world. At 20 years old, he joined the Freedom Rides, a series of bus trips in 1961 that challenged segregation on public transportation. He sat at lunch counters where he wasn't supposed to sit. He marched for the right to vote, and in 1963, he spoke at the March on Washington, where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech. And at every turn, he met resistance. And one of those moments happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge while marching from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. John Lewis and some 100 others were marching for voting rights. The law said black citizens had the right to vote, but in reality, they were blocked by poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation. So they marched. They started across the bridge, knowing that on the other side, state troopers were waiting. They did not turn back. When they reached the other side, the troopers attacked. Clubs, tear gas, men on horseback. John Lewis was knocked to the ground. His skull was fractured. But in the chaos and in the violence, something happened. The world was watching. People across the country saw what was happening, and they could not look away. And instead of stopping the movement strengthened it. The resistance had come, as it always does. But instead of letting it stop them, they pushed back harder, and they made good trouble. And that moment on the bridge led directly to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. John Lewis called it good trouble because he understood something that can easily be forgotten. Resistance is part of progress. When injustice is challenged, it pushes back. When voices rise up, there are always those who want to silence them. When we take steps forward, there will be moments that try to knock us back. But progress isn't about winning a single fight. It's about standing our ground when the pushback comes. It's about making good trouble even when it costs something. It's tempting to believe that we are losing, but history tells us otherwise. History tells us that this is a pattern, because when we stand our ground, when we push back, when we make good trouble, change comes.
When Carolyn shared with me the idea of a service with stories about good trouble, I was so glad to think about what I might want to bring into this conversation. And also because we can no longer take it for granted that these histories will be taught and shared. We need to tell these stories over and over again so this wisdom gets passed down and not lost. So she asked me what I wanted to bring into the mix. Stories of people who found a way to move forward in their own time and place, in their own fight for a more compassionate world. Now, any of you who've known me for a little while know that I often look towards our ancestors for inspiration and hope, and figuring that if people could do brave things then, we can certainly do brave things now. And there are so many stories of fierce compassion and creative courage in our history. But this time when Carolyn asked me what I wanted to share, instead of choosing something that I already knew a lot about, something tickled in the back of my brain. This vague memory of a protest in Washington, D.C. that took place when I was about 13 years old. A recollection of a photograph I had seen somewhere in my life. A photograph of people leaving wheelchairs and crutches behind at the steps of the Capitol building to pull themselves up to demand equal access and treatment from a society that had almost no civil rights protections at the time for people with disabilities. So I did a little digging to try to follow that little tickling in my brain of this photograph that I remember, and I found out that in just a few weeks, on March 12th, we will arrive at the 35th anniversary of the Wheels of Justice March and the Capitol Crawl. It was 1990. And the Americans with Disabilities Act had gotten stalled in Congress. And until the ADA came along, there was nothing to protect people with disabilities from discrimination, segregation, and exclusion in workplaces and schools, in hospitals and civic spaces, and transportation. And after years and years of coordinated advocacy on this issue, legislation was finally being written, but it was moving very slowly. And so, tired of waiting, on March 12th, hundreds of disability activists arrived in D.C. in a long march all the way to the steps of the Capitol, and then about 60 people left their wheelchairs or crutches. Some of them actually carried it with them, their aids, and they pulled themselves up the steps one at a time until they got to the top. And some of you may remember this. How many of you remember this? It was in the news, but not nearly as much as it should have been. It disappeared after a day or two. And the youngest person to make that climb was 8-year-old Jennifer Keelan Chaffins. She had started protesting with her mother when she was 6, and she continues her work in disability justice to this day. And later that day, her mother, Cynthia, at Jennifer's request, was arrested with over 100 people in the Capitol Rotunda at a sit-in. And over the next few days, more and more people were requested as they used their physical presence in the Capitol to demand recognition, to demand to be seen and included in our shared civic life. And due in large part to these direct actions of protest and witness by disability activists and the refusal to be erased from public view and kept segregated, because of this, in July of 1990, the ADA finally passed through Congress and was signed into law. And many of us now take for granted all of the things that have come about because of the passage of the ADA. And I personally didn't know much about the history of the disability rights movement, but the events of our current moment have prompted me to get curious and learn more, because once again, we are being called into this moment of courageous action. And there are efforts right now to roll back all of those gains we have made over the past 35 years, and we are not going to let that happen. We are going to hold the line and keep moving forward in this work of inclusion. Learning about actions like the Capitol Crawl was stirring up those memories that I didn't even know I had about what life was like before this was passed in 1990, about the elementary school I went to that was 3 stories with not an elevator in sight, about how there were 3 Jennifers in my 6th grade class and none of them were in a wheelchair. My life and Jennifer Keelan Chaffin's life were kept separate. We had no opportunity to know each other because of the structural barriers that were in place until the ADA was passed to remove them. And learning this story has strengthened my resolve to keep from sliding backward, to hold on to the good we've created, and keep fighting for the future we dream about for our children and our children's children. And we are here to make good trouble.
Let us enter into a time of stillness where we can allow ourselves to rest. It is part of a daily practice of justice that sustains and grounds us. I invite you to feel your feet on the ground, and wherever you are, let the ground support you as you take a few breaths to possibly release some of the tension you may be carrying. And hear these words by Jane Hirschfield. More and more I have come to admire resilience. Not the simple resilience of a pillow whose foam returns over and over to the same shape, but the sinuous tenacity of a tree. A tree finding the light newly blocked on one side, it turns to another. A blind intelligence, true, but out of such persistence arose turtles, rivers, mitochondria, figs, all this resinous, intractable earth. We move forward, we stand firm, and we pause. Because we need time together to gather our strength. This act of justice is not a one-time act of courage. It is a steady practice, a rhythm we must return to day by day. And we must create this space to renew ourselves, time to rest, to breathe, to remember the deeper calling that brought us here. We are not on this path alone. Let us enter into a time of stillness. Spirit of love, hold us in this moment. We are weary from the work. We are burdened by the weight of injustice. We are troubled by all that is not yet healed. But we are here, still breathing, still reaching for what is possible. Let us find rest not as retreat, but as renewal. Let us breathe deeply, not to turn away, but to turn back with strength. Let us remember not only the struggles of the past, but the courage that carries us forward. May we be sustained by the ancestors who marched before us. May we be lifted by the voices that sing beside us. May we be strengthened for the road ahead. And when we rise from this stillness, may we rise with purpose. May we rise with hope. May we rise ready to move forward once more. Amen.
Every month here at the Unitarian Society, we partner with a project or program that lives our values in the world, and we give away a portion of our offertory to support that work. This month, we are partnering with PFLAG. PFLAG is an organization that centers LGBTQ justice and brings friends and allies and family members and co-conspirators into the work together in this important area of our lives. We have a long-standing relationship with PFLAG and a lot of our justice partners here in Santa Barbara. And so in addition to supporting this work of PFLAG, I also want to invite you on March 1st, which is next Saturday at noon, to a rally in support of our transgender community. We will be celebrating and honoring the gifts of our transgender community here in Santa Barbara and showing up. And so I invite all of you to show up, to be present physically together in community. If you can be there, join us on March 1st at De La Guerra Plaza. And let us read together our affirmation of gratitude and giving. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
Thank you for that moment of joy, Heather. Change disrupts. It unsettles the status quo, threatens old systems, and demands something new. And when it does, resistance follows. The AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, known as ACT UP, was a grassroots movement that protested the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s and 90s. When they took to the street demanding urgency in the face of crisis, they were ridiculed, called too radical, too disruptive. And yet, without their boldness, without their refusal to be ignored, life-saving treatments would not have come as quickly as they did. Through nonviolent protests, targeted demands, and relentless education, they achieved lasting victories in medical treatment and healthcare access. Their pain and persistence saved lives, even as many did not live to see the full impact of their fight. And when the forces of injustice dig in, when progress seems to stall, as in this moment, are we losing ground? History shows us that this pattern is not a sign of failure, it is part of the process. The pushback always comes. It came for the abolitionists and the suffragists. It came for the civil rights movement and disability justice. And over time, it is the weight of persistence that bends the arc a little further towards justice. The environmental movement, too, has seen these patterns. After early victories in the 1970s, the Reagan era brought deregulation and setbacks, but activists kept going. They built movements, they educated, they lobbied, and because they did, the groundwork was laid for global climate agreements and the policies we are fighting for today. Progress moves like the ocean, surging forward, pulling back, gathering force once more. There is a rhythm to this work. We move forward, we stand firm, and we pause. Not because the work is done, but because we need time to gather our strength. We need time to listen to those around us and to listen to our bodies. Author Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us that movements are living ecosystems, not machines. She writes, "Small is good. Small is all. The large is a reflection of the small." The work we do in community, the way we tend to one another, ripples outward. Our resistance isn't only in the large moments of protest, although they are valuable. It is also in the daily acts of care for ourselves and each other, of refusing to give in to despair. And that integral part of resistance is our rest. Tricia Hershey, in her book Rest is Resistance, called rest a portal for healing, for imagination, for resistance. She reminds us that exhaustion is not the price of justice. In a culture that demands we be constantly productive, pausing is itself an act of defiance. Resting is not quitting. It is what allows us to keep going. And that's why we must create this space to renew ourselves, time to reflect, to breathe, to remember the deeper calling that brings us here. One space for that renewal is that Tuesday evening Taizé service I was telling you about on March 11th, an opportunity to pause, reflect, and renew. We need time to hold each other in love and struggle, to remember that we are not walking this path alone. This is a practice of justice. It is in many ways, it's many acts that weave a tapestry of care and transformation. This commitment we make daily, even when the path ahead is uncertain. And when we sing, we remember the voices that carried this struggle before us. And we lean on the wisdom of those who face the same storms, the same heartbreak, and still pressed on. Then we too find the strength to take one more step. And so we keep going. We listen for the rhythm, for the voices that call us forward. We plant seeds that we may never see grow. We hold each other up when the road is long. And even when the path is uncertain, even when exhaustion creeps in, we are not alone. In this, there is strength. In this, there is renewal. In this, there is hope. Let us keep moving forward again and again, for the work is not finished, but neither are we. So let us rise, renewed and recommitted, as we sing, "Keep on Moving Forward."
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. loudly. Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward, singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back.
May we go forth with courage. May we carry the rhythm of justice in our hearts. May we find strength in one another, renewal in rest, and hope in the work yet to be done. And when the road is long, may you know you do not walk it alone. And when the way is uncertain, may you trust that every small act of care, of resistance, of faith ripples outward. And may we keep on moving forward again and again with love as our guide. Go in peace, go in power, go in love. And let us call out a blessing.